Hey, everybody. I am so glad you could join us. I'm Ann Lake from Thrive. I'm here with NetGiver, both Miriam and Eric. We're back again for round two, you guys. Now, let's make sure we talk about some of the key points here. You're all here because we really want to understand what we can do to really help, those in communities that we are here to support. Now, most importantly, we have a couple things for you all to help you make this really powerful. Number one, you're obviously here today. Number two, we also have this gorgeous electronic notebook. And I know some of you may be like, I don't need another thing to do. Let me just encourage you. What's beautiful about this notebook is that you can put all this awesome in here. We're going to send it out in a beautiful format for you so that you can actually have it and start activating on it right away. Hey, funny activation is what we're going to all talk about today. So with that, I'd like to hand it back over to Miriam.
Sure. Anne, would you like to do a little bit of we covered so much last time and we got through a lot of great information, a great amount of topics. I would love if we could start off today by going through what we uncovered in the Uncover section and give us a little opportunity to review that. Of course, in that fantastic digital workbook that you talked about, there's also the opportunity to re-watch that section and re-watch the entire session to get all of those details out. However, of course, everything is going to be in the notebook as well. We just want to make sure you've got all the resources at your fingertips. So, Anne, why don't you share our session recap?
Absolutely. And you know what? I completely forgot about the fact that we do have this recorded. It is such a great asset because sometimes, let's be honest, when you are looking at this, yes, we do go for an hour, but there's a lot of good nuggets in here. So thank you for that reminder. That is fantastic. Yes, quickly, let's think about what we discussed last time. And it was really most important was we spent our time defining what is that gorgeous credit union hug, right? We talked about that and understand what is that impact and what are those audiences of this hug. And, when we think about it specifically, we have three audiences we serve. We're really well aware of our members, but we also have our employees and we have our community. So we talked about how that reaches and all that goodness. And of course, finally, we talked about what does it look like right now? Right now, as we're walking into our space, hey, there's a lot going on, right? We've been coming out of pandemic. We have some economic, interesting opportunities, as well as we also have the opportunity to partner with our fintechs. And finally, we brought it all together and said, look, how are we going to, now we've defined it, how do we get more? And how do we measure that, right? Because we can't really get more without measuring where we've been. So I kind of give that to a broad brush. If you haven't had a chance to go back into your notebook and look at some of those key pieces to get those, this is a wonderful opportunity to be like, hey, let me scroll back up in that really easy to use notebook and look at it. Anything else you want to add, Miriam or Eric?
I think that's it. I think we're excited to get into that next section. And yes, we move very quickly. We all have so much we want to share and impart to you and help you in your credit union journey and empowering you with an even stronger credit union hug. So I think we'll dive right in and I'll let Eric take over the next section where we're going to talk about a number of things today, but really the focus is how to activate. We've started to assess what we've got. Now, how do we really, really activate what we've got and start putting those pieces in place?
And that's great. And everybody with the end in mind, obviously, we always want to take a look at when we start talking about activating, what are we talking about doing? We're talking about activating for our members. And at the end of the day, that's where the rubber meets the road. So as we think about the topics that we're going to discuss today, we have to be thinking about the end in mind. And of course, that's with our audience, and our audience is our members and potential future members in that audience. And so, last time we talked about the credit union hug, and Anne, we talked about the hug, and you've created the hug, and so let's give us the background again on the hug, and then I'm going to talk about how that makes this unique.
Right. So let's think about the hug, right? We think about it as, so many times we think about, well, we love our members, so it's the service. Well, we're bigger and broader than that. Yes, we are a mission-based financial institution, and yes, our whole point is to improve our members' lives, but we do that by touching many different ways. Clearly, it's the financial touch. Cool. We give great products and services. Our loans, if you think about our loans being a hug, that is the way that we give money back to the member because it's going to be a less charged loan. But let's think about the repercussions of what we do when we hug, right? That is when we start thinking about what are the other pieces in the community that we need to touch. we saw so many beautiful examples during the pandemic of credit unions going out and helping small members, small business, small businesses in their communities, as well as looking at, and this is my perfect example here, of Children's Hospital. We all know that credit unions love to support Children's Hospital, and that has a ramification to not only the credit union itself, to the members who are served by that, but to the employees. So it really built us all together. So the hug, that was a little texture there, but the hug is simply, what is our mind and our heart together? And how do we impact those three audiences? Anything you'd want to add to that, Eric?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it from there, and I'm gonna say, okay, the next piece of this we have to think about as we think about our end user in mind is how does that separate and how does that differentiate us from everybody else that's also trying to get warm and fuzzy with their customers, right? And so what we need to do is we need to define a unique value proposition, and that means what can we do that's something that is unique to us as a credit union, as an individual credit union, even if you will, that helps take that hug that we're talking about and make it unique to your organization. It's part of your brand. It's part of the experience that you're going to give to your members and your potential future members. And so you really want to be very careful to think about what it is that you want to be able to provide as part of that hug and that experience. Some of the organizations that we've seen do things like put coffee shops or donut shops into their branches or into their locations, and both banks and credit unions are starting to do things like that right now. But unless you're going to be actually baking the donuts yourself in the donut shop in the credit union, it really isn't any more unique than that, unless maybe you're tying it into a nonprofit give back sort of a thing. Or what are you doing with that? Are you employing kids in the neighborhood to teach them about responsibility of running a business? And is that the uniqueness of that? You know, there's an entertainer by the name of Mike Geyer. And Mike is a 6'5" baritone singer who, for the most of his career, had very little notoriety and wasn't very popular, because obviously baritone singers for guys, they're not really in popular music very often. When you got, Johnny Cash, maybe he was a baritone singer, right? But most singers, male singers are tenors or whatnot. And so what this guy did is he got into the clown makeup sort of thing, and he turned himself into a clown by the name of Puddle's Pity Party. Right. And in full clown costume, he would sing songs. He would sing actual songs that we would know from the radio. His most famous song that he covers is Royals by Lords. Right. And he did this to such acclaim that he was actually on the 2017 season of America's Got Talent. Right. And here he is, a guy that he would never be on that show had he not gone in and made himself unique as a baritone singer to be able to be in that position. And that's an example of, it's maybe a bit of an extreme example. We don't want you dressing up as clowns. That might scare a few of your potential members or current members. But the idea is he took something unique and he created a unique value proposition. And when you go and you find him on YouTube all over the place right now, Puddle's Pity Party. And you can see him doing this act and this routine that he has. And it has made him unique, and it has made him famous, and it has given him more bandwidth and more followers and more fans. In fact, about 27 million people have watched his one video that he sings the Royals song on. Lords also has called it the best remake of their song. So it's just one of those things where you can take a look at an example like that and say, how can I take this just a little bit further, whether that's the donut shop that employs kids in the neighborhood and helps them get jobs to learn or something like that. So what we're gonna do right now is
we've got a poll I'd love to put out there to see what the people who've joined us today views as their unique value proposition.
Yeah, let's go ahead and throw that up.
All right. Can everyone see the poll? Now, we've got a number of things here. There might be unique value propositions. It's multiple choice. You can go ahead and select multiple things. You can also send us a message with what you feel your unique value proposition is. Go ahead and fill that out, and we'll take a look at the results. Eric, I'm sorry, back over to you.
Yeah, no, we'll take a look at these answers, and we'll talk a little bit about how to take these and see what kind of responses we get with this.
All right, let's give it another couple of seconds here. This is really to help you tangibly brainstorm what makes you a credit union. And again, these are just some suggestions you might have totally different things. You might have a coffee shop with proceeds going back to your nonprofits in your communities, whatever it is that makes you as a credit union unique to your members. Let's go ahead and share those results. All right. All right. Eric, can you see
Yeah,
that?
well, I mean, I think some of these results are coming in. They're showing that, like an in-branch experience is a unique experience. And I want to talk about what makes that unique. What about walking into a branch, into your branch in particular, makes it different than walking into any other branch, in any other financial institution. And again, we talked about the idea, maybe it's the coffee shop, maybe it's a little bit more than that, right? If it's financial literacy, what kinds of programs are you doing? What kinds of things are you doing in financial literacy that helps you be able to establish some uniqueness in what you're doing? So all of this relates back to your brand. And when we start talking about your brand, we wanted to just define the brand for just a quick second. And I think the best way that we can define a brand, and the best way that I like to talk about a brand is a relationship, right? And a relationship, and any kind of relationship you have, whether that's with a spouse, whether that's with a family member, a friend, a business colleague, whatever it is, relationships are built on trust, right? And it's a simple transaction, and here's how that works. When you make a promise to somebody and you keep that promise, your brand or your relationship increases, it strengthens, right? The opposite is also true. If you make a promise on something and don't deliver on it, then your relationship suffers a little bit, right? So the goal really is to take your brand promise, make your promises to your audience, to your community, to your members, to your potential members, and bring them back into the relationship by continuing to deliver on those promises. And the more unique you can make those brand promises, and the more you can deliver on those unique brand promises, the more you differentiate your brand from all other products and services that are out there. And that's an opportunity for you to be able to then lean into what we're talking about when we talk about the hug, right? And that's really what it comes down to, is we want the hug to be something that is unique and something that provides a feel-good part of that. It's a part of that relationship that is a feel-good that you want to take back with you and make something that that people can't necessarily get anywhere else. So as we talk about the definition of brand, what are some examples of the things people can expect to receive and feel and experience when they interact with your credit union? And I'm asking this to our audience. I'd love to get some, just maybe some responses to that, either via chat or coming back on the line, and just talk about some things that maybe you do or that you've experienced from your members where that has been something that we could define.
It's funny, Eric, we've got quite a few people here on the chat, and it looks like the branch experience has been one people have been focusing on, only because I think that from what they're saying, because I think that's the one that's got the most, tactical points to it.
Sure. Okay. Well, and I think that that's an important one, right? I mean, obviously, when people talk about coming into the branch, the reason they're coming into the branch is because that relationship is there, right? During the pandemic, when you couldn't come into branches, right? When you had to do everything remotely, we had to find different ways to create that one-to-one relationship with members when they're coming into the branch. So as we look at those kinds of experiences, right? Those in-person experiences, for example, with the in-branch kind of thing, it's knowing your members, it's knowing who they are, it's allowing them to feel part of the team, if you will, right? And I've got a background in brand. Obviously, that's why I'm talking about brand, but my brand background also extends to some fun I had early in my career when I was doing some brand development with the Minnesota Vikings, and had a chance to really dive into their brand. And there's really not a better analogy for brand and turning your members and your customers or your potential members into fans of your brand, right? And so sports does that in a way that is really unique. And I had an opportunity when I was working with the team to travel with the Vikings on occasion. And one of the trips I'll never forget, and it ties back to brand in a way that I think is really unique. We were traveling out east, and we were when you travel with a team and you stay in the team hotel, they divide the floors of the hotel differently, so that on the 5th floor of this particular hotel were all the executives from the team. They stayed on the 5th floor, and then on the 4th floor is where the team stayed, and then the 3rd floor is where the coaches stayed. And obviously, we insulated the players, because you can imagine what chaos that is when traveling with an NFL team, what that might be. And you fill in the blanks on whatever you think that might look like. But when we were getting ready to go to the game, I remember getting on the elevator, and I was on the 5th floor, and so I just thought, I don't want to interact with any of the players. I don't want to interact with any of the coaches. It's their game day. I don't want to, I don't want to distract anybody from anything. They're focused on going to win the game. So I just want to get in the elevator and go all the way down to the lobby, not talk to anybody, and just walk on the bus and not interact with anybody. So I get on the elevator, and sure enough, it stops on the 4th floor. Right. And this is a time when the Vikings had on their team Dante Culpepper was the quarterback, and Chris Carter, the future Hall of Fame wide receiver, was on the team, and Robert Smith was on the team, and Randy Moss was a young player on the team. And of course, Randy Moss eventually also went on to become a Hall of Fame player. And certainly walking into any of the players, you didn't want to do that, but you didn't want to interact with any of the superstars for sure, right? So the elevator stops, and the doors open up, and there's one player standing there, and he's dressed head to toe in a black warm up, and he comes walking in, and I give him the head nod, and he gives me the head nod. You know how that head nod goes, right? And he walks over the corner, pulls the hoodie down over his shoulder, and sort of sits back in the corner of the elevator. And I sat back in the other corner of the elevator. And then the elevator went down 2 more floors and got to the 2nd floor. And the doors opened up, and it opened up to an elevator bay of Vikings fans. These happened to be all women, and they were so excited. And they were talking 100 miles an hour. There might have been 8 or 10 of them, and there were 30 conversations going on between the 8 of them, right? And they're dressed head to toe. I mean, we're talking, Helga horns and the braids and the purple Randy Moss jerseys and purple pants and shoes and socks. And they had, the gold and purple beads. They were just decked, and they were talking, and they had their all their stuff with them. They were ready to go to the game. They come flooding into the elevator, and we all squeeze in the elevator. And the rest of the way down to the lobby, they're so excited about being at a Vikings game, seeing Randy Moss play in person, seeing Dante Culpepper in person, seeing all these guys play in person. They just couldn't believe. They're so excited. The elevator doors open. They walk out to the lobby, hear them walking across the lobby, just laughing and having a great time. And I look over at the other side of the elevator, and Randy Moss pulls his hood back up over his eyes, looks at me kind of sideways, and he's got the braces, and so he smiles, this giant, great big braces smile, and he just walks out of the elevator right behind these gals. And I bring that story up to tell you this: when you've got members that are so engaged with your brand that they're feeling so excited about the brand, sometimes they don't even understand really what's going on around them. They just know the feeling that they have. And here these fans were so excited to see Randy Moss play today. They were just so geeked about it. They were so emotionally tied in to being able to see Moss play that they didn't even realize he was standing right behind him in the elevator. Had they known that, they might have all died right there and never actually saw the game. But fortunately they didn't. They got a chance to go see the game, and I hope they had a great time. And whether they won or lost, that wasn't the point. The point was they had that experience, right? That fan experience of being part of something bigger than themselves, being part of something that, that in their world really, really matters. And so when we talk about unique value propositions, when we talk about those kinds of things, I think it's an important thing to consider. How can we make our member experience much more like the fan side of it? So Miriam, what are your thoughts on some of those feelings? I know you've been a soccer fan, and this could happen for music, it could happen for theater, it could happen for anything else. It wouldn't have to just be sports.
Yeah, it's about creating that affinity, right? That I want to go back, I need to go back. So you're a season ticket holder. of a theater company that you're a fan of. You follow a concert around, you get passionate about what they get passionate about, and vice versa. They try to mirror back to you your own values. And that's all because we're heightening the excitement, we're heightening the dopamine coursing through our system, we're getting really engaged. And so yes, I am a theater fan and a music fan. Those are things that get me really excited. Soccer, absolutely. And when I see my peers getting excited, that gets me more amped up. When I see the brand, the theater company, the musicians who are giving back to my community, who are engaged in what I'm engaged in, whatever it is, that's where that fan affinity just cycles and cycles and cycles and heightens that closeness and that feeling of belonging that everyone is looking for. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, you are building your communities, and your communities can be defined in many, many different ways. So in Eric's example, he's talking about the community of Vikings fans, right? But that could extend. It could be the Minneapolis community of Vikings fans, the national community of Vikings fans, women Vikings fans, football fans, right? We can build out, and it's only the beginning when you start to put your brand out there and live up to those brand promises of, hey, but well, Eric, talk about this. I love this aspect. Vikings don't win every game, and yet
No.
they still have fans.
Yeah, what's interesting about that is as we looked at delivering an experience to the fans, the promise you have to make, and this is part of that promise we talked about a little bit earlier. When you make a promise and you deliver on that promise, that builds trust. If you promise to win, right, and you can't win or you don't win, that breaks that trust. So instead of actually promising wins and losses, or even promising an experience, what we always tried to do with the Vikings was we always tried to create the sense of hope, right? The hope that there could be a victory, the hope there could be a playoff run, the hope they could make the Super Bowl, right? And that was very valuable to us because you can imagine in an off season, right after the team, there's only one team that wins the Super Bowl. So there are 31 teams that go home, thinking maybe next year's our year, right? How do we keep that momentum going all the time? We take a look at our members from that perspective as well. What we want to be able to deliver for members when we look at their ability to hope, what are their hopes and dreams? What are the things that they hope for that we can help them with? How can we put in their mind the ability to say, hey, we're behind you. We're your cheerleaders. We're your fans in helping you reach your financial goals and the hopes and dreams that you have as members. And that's really where the correlation comes in very nicely, because we can kind of flip it on its side there a little bit and talk a little bit about cheering on our members as they become fans of our brand and our credit union. We can talk about cheering them on, and the relationship is strengthened that way.
I think Dan Stoltz has something that he shared on how he views the values of brand affinity. Let's go ahead and watch that.
The thing that I really do love most about being the CEO of Spire Credit Union is in our industry. I will tell you this, that Spire had this super long mission statement, and we sanded it down to 2 words. It's improve lives. So I get up every morning to improve lives. That's the metric. That's what drives me. And I feel like that's the credit union difference. But then I want to add our core value. And again, we had a huge pages of all these core values. We have 2 words. It's we care. So we want to improve lives, and we want to step up, and we want to show our customer members that we care about them, that we care about what they care about. That's a whole different philosophy than trying to follow a strategic plan. And we truly feel it. We bank with a heart, and we care. We lean into our members. And then honestly, then we added that core action. That's 2 words, and it's give back. That's one way we can show in how we use the net giver, is that we lean into that giving back by improving their lives, but also showing them that we care about what they care about. And to me, that's the legacy piece as a CEO, is really making this difference and improving a life and literally showing people that we care day in and day out, that they're the most important person that we are dealing with at that time, and really making a difference in our community, making a splash. I love it.
You know, what's really fun to see about what Spire Credit Union has done, and they've grown quite a bit lately. When Dan talks about making the promise,
I really do.
right,
love
and making that an opportunity to be able to say, we care and we want to deliver on that. When he does that, and they do deliver on that, they continue to grow, right? And it's been remarkable growth actually for Spire, and that's great. But it's not only because they make that promise, but it's also because they deliver on it again and again and again and again. You don't just make the promise once and then deliver on it once. You make the promise again and again and again and again, and you deliver on it again and again and again and again. And I think that that's really where we talk about this, the trust and the brand promise being something that you can continue to do over and over again. It was a very simple brand promise. We care is the brand promise, right? And then the other core action of giving back is something that they do as well. So as they're talking about giving back, and as they're talking about involving their members in giving back and providing NetGiver to their membership so that their members can give back, and that the credit union then can match those donations using NetGiver, that's the proof. That's the promise delivered that Spire Credit Union is doing right now in their promise that they've been making to their members, and it's working really well for them, and they're delivering really, really strong on that promise, and it's fun to see. And as NetGiver, it's fun to be a part of that and help them deliver on that promise. So that's leaning into those promises, leaning into that the credit union hug that we've been talking about. So I think we've got another poll, do we not? How do you add superpower brand promise management to your brand? Or is this
This is something that it's an opportunity for Ann.
It's a question for Ann. Sorry, Ann. I'm going to ask you this question.
We could do a poll, and we thought about doing a poll, but we're not going to, because when we do think about the brand, and let me just kind of tie in a couple pieces here. When we are thinking about that brand, right, we got to be thinking about, how does this become actionable? This is what we're talking about. How does it become actionable? So as we think about it, we really want to make sure that we are saying, hey, how much of our brand is part of our business plan? We talked about how it's an experience that lives inside you, but it is measurable. We can measure that. We can measure that in impressions. We can measure that in satisfaction. We can measure that in product and service usage. We want to make sure that we look at what are those key points around the brand and how does that translate and pull through. So as you're thinking about that in the hug, we want to make sure that you also are saying, wait, there is a measurement metric, there is data behind this, and most importantly, I'm aligning it up to measurement metrics within the credit union, my ROI, my ROE, possibly, like I said, satisfaction and loyalty, but also making sure that it's part of our strategic objectives as well.
Yeah, and being strategic with this means thinking about the end in mind and knowing how you're going to track it, and knowing that you're going to put certain KPIs in place to be able to measure it. And it doesn't, and we always talk about this, data doesn't have to be complicated. Some of the best data is very simple data, and data that you can use just to benchmark where you're at and how you're doing. I think sometimes we get this idea that all data is super complicated, and it's really not. It really talks about just taking a look at the end in mind, creating some basic key metrics for brand, and then building from there. Right.
And on that data point, don't even think about it as data, think about it as information. You have some knowledge gaps and you've got to fill them so that you can do more. And we talked about this in the first session. How do I do more of these hugs? I can only do more if I can understand what I have done so I can build my pathway forward. So think of also that as that information you need to fill those knowledge gaps.
Yeah, we're about halfway through our session today. And if there are questions that anybody has on brand, please feel free to put them in chat or raise your hand and ask them. But we're happy to answer those, or contact us offline too if you need to, with deeper questions on that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important thing is to get started and take a look at what can actually be done. This isn't complicated, rocket science here, but it does require some planning and does require some, putting some thoughts in place. So if we don't have any questions, I think what I'll do is we'll slide into the next part with Miriam, which is our next topic that talks about delivering
our fans and finding our fans and aligning with them and doing some of that you talked about, of building that hope and finding that thing that makes you unique. So right now, I'm going to ask you to do something since some of us are on camera and the rest I'm just going to hold to your honor. Close your eyes now. Close them and picture your perfect member. Okay. You know who this is. You know what your member looks like. You know what they're wearing, how often they come in, how often they engage with you and your staff. You serve many people, but who is it you see when you close your eyes? It may not be your favorite member. It may not be the one who comes in and chats with you for an hour each time. It might be the one who challenges you, who supports you, is a fan of you. Okay, now open your eyes. That is your target audience. That person, that individual represents your membership. And yes, everyone is unique. Absolutely, every member is unique. But you have to know at the core who your member is. Who is your fan? Who is that elevator full of women with the Helga horns that get up and cheer, right? Because they all feel it is their job. It is their responsibility to show up at the games, to turn on the TV, to follow the Vikings, to follow their team. It's their responsibility as part of that community. And you have those same individuals. Those same individuals that will, this is that credit union difference. The individuals that when they see something on social media that questions your brand, when they see that, they will chime right in and they will say how valuable you are in their lives. They will talk about those hugs, those goosebump moments. That is your target audience. So let's think about this beyond geography. Okay, I know that sometimes it's tempting to think about, okay, we're limited by our field of membership. We're limited based on who we can actually reach today by our definitions. Well, no, your members move, they grow, they expand. How are you making sure that they are part of your community as their community grows, right? They still will have the same school that they've gone to. And I saw that in one of the responses to last week's questions, somebody talked about how their part of the hug is donating as a credit union to their local school and seeing that direct impact on the student, right? That student now has parents, has family, they themselves grow up, and how do you think those individuals feel? So understanding that audience is so essential to actually then delivering that brand promise, because you can make a promise, but without knowing where it's going to go and who you're trying to reach, it's just sending things out into the ether, and that really will not hit home. So your hug will be empty arms, right? Let's target that one, and we've talked about that fan experience. So take a look at the values of your members, take a look at what they engage in, take a look at, are they supporting the schools? Is this a community really strong into education? Is this a community that's hurting in a specific way right now? And how can we address the needs of those fans? Because those fans, those people that show up to the stadium, they get something out of that experience, right? And yes, we as credit unions are providing great loans, great products, great services, but we're providing more than that. We're providing that hug. We're talking about how we make people feel. And when we give to others, things actually physically, chemically happen in our bodies, right? When you give to others, it activates the area of the brain that's associated with pleasure, with social connection, and with trust. And when Eric talks about how building brand affinity, building on your brand is all about delivering on the brand promises, because it's about trust. And when we build this trust, when we give, when we engage, we're triggering those parts of the brain, that altruistic behavior, it actually releases endorphins into our brain and boosts the happiness for us as well as the people around us. So one thing that Dan Stoltz of Spire says is that data points help us understand where our members are at and where their hearts are at. So when Ann talks about, yes, don't call it data, let's call it information, because that information feeds to us everything we need to know to deliver a better hug, a stronger hug. But we can't get those data points without first knowing our members, right? So remember, think again about that member you pictured, that member who is your best member, the one who will let you know when the app isn't working quite right, but they're not angry, they just want to let you know. the one who comes in and asks what this charge is, because it didn't expect it to be there, but they trust that you're going to solve it for them, because they trust that you are going to make them feel taken care of. And I don't care what generation you are, if you can make someone feel taken care of, if it's because they're face to face on a screen and they can reach you, or they need to come into your branch, knowing that you're there and you're there to take care of them will solve their problem. So we asked Dan Stoltz, one of our gurus here, our CEO guru, about how he wanted his members to feel about the credit union. And this is what he said. Let's take a listen.
You know, as CEOs, we love when somebody says, hey, you got a great product, or hey, you gave me the best rate in the marketplace. Those are feel goods. But what are the real feel good for me is when someone comes up and says, you made a difference in our neighborhood. You made a difference in my life. You invested in something that I care deeply about. That's what I love to hear the most. That's what Spire strives to do, is make those changes and improve those lives. And then secondarily, we want great loans, great products, great savings, great rates, but it starts out with improving the life.
So he says that essentially actions are louder than words, right? It's about those goosebump moments.
You know, as CEOs, we love when somebody says, hey, you got a great product, or hey, you gave me the best.
We really want to hear what Dan says. Could you?
You know what, Miriam, there's something that was just very resonating about that. And that was, you make a difference in my life.
Yes.
That is its own goosebump moment. And to that point, if you make a difference in my life, how much more can you elevate? Having an impact in somebody's life is incredible. And wow, what a day, what an inflection point that is.
Yeah. I mean, it is that. And then he said, secondarily, we want to offer great loans, great products, great services, right? Secondarily, because when you think about that fan experience, right? You've got a summer, if it's football, you've got a winter, if it's other sports, where you're not engaging, you're not there. And if we think about that the same way that we think about our products, a member doesn't need a loan every single day, right? I got my mortgage a year ago. I do not need another mortgage. I probably do not need to refinance my home. I do not need those products right now. But who's going to be part of that journey with me in between those life events, right? Those actions of being part of my life are what's going to make me come back time and time again, so that when I am in that pivotal moment, when I need something in my life, when I need something, I remember who's made that difference in my life. Which brands, which teams, which credit unions, and which are the ones that have been there showing up for me in between those moments, right? Because again, at the end of the day, when we talk about those products and services, we're not talking about the mortgage that I care about. We care about the home that I'm in, for the family I get to have. We talk about the not the car that I'm driving, but getting safely from place to place, to the job that I need, to all of these pieces of life that's keeping me connected. That's what I'm being provided with when I get a loan. So being there for the whole journey, yes, we can put a lot of lip service to it, but let's remember about those moments that build trust and help us lean into that hug. You're exactly right, Anne. So, and how do you suggest that people start to assess and take a step back to look at what they're currently doing? Because it's so easy to look at, we offer great rates and services, right? What are your thoughts on that?
God, what a great question, because you're right. We think about it and we think, many times from the credit union perspective, we think about the credit union and how we measure success, right? And right now we really look at that traditionally through, our profit and loss and some of our key, ratios that we have. What we get to think about and what our opportunity is as we're looking at measuring our impact, our brand impact, our hug impact, is how we get to measure in those three communities we talked about, right? We still look at the member and, as you just said, how do we understand what the member's dreams are? And how can we make sure we're partnering with them to help them deliver their financial dreams, right? Hey, how do our employees also get to achieve what they're looking for, and how do we partner with them? And then we get to bring it all together. And I love how we have the virtuous circle up here. We get to bring this all together and look at how do we take all this in the community that we exist in, that our members exist in, that our employees exist in, and how do we make sure that we are measuring our impact with that? And that's where we see activities we currently are doing, such as, you know, I keep coming back to our Children's Hospital because it's just such a wonderful universal impact organization and connected credit unions. And we look at that and we can begin to see, wow, we know our members have benefited from Children's Hospital. We know our employees benefit from Children's Hospital. We know as we connect and how we can do that, we are improving that overall community. So getting back to your measurement points, we have to think beyond just the profit and loss. We have to think about the other pieces. We have to find out what are those metrics we can measure. So what are those pieces? What is our in kind? How do we help the different, you know, elements we talked about, you know, achieving the financial dream, making sure that the community, we serve the community. What is the information we have right now? And what does that do? And then how do we connect that to be able to show impact to our overall mission?
Yeah, and all that's great. And I think one of the things that we think about when we talk about like that impact and the data we're looking at, and one of the things that we built into NetGiver was that ability to see and track where the members are giving, so that we can be involved in that part of it as well. So let's say it is Children's Hospital, right? And they're giving to Children's Hospital and they're making that impact. And now we have an opportunity to claim that as one of our unique value propositions, right? Bring it back to the brand and bring it back to that delivering that promise. So when Dan Stoltz talks about, you know, give back as part of their core, they can take a look at what their members are doing as well. And those data points related to that, which fill in the virtual circle here and help us continue to deliver on those community giving efforts.
Hey, Eric, can I just nerd out for just a second more on that? Because
go ahead,
you know,
yeah, let's riff.
If I may, there are two big points we have here, two amazing assets. One is we can see where else our members give. We can also see where else our members spend. We can bring those two together. So if we see this is a pain in the marketplace, we have that superpower to be able to help deliver and grow and spread our impact.
And there's dozens of ways of seeing how that can change people's lives and make an impact in people's lives just by having that information at our fingertips and being able to help either macro or micro, right? In those cases, to be able to help those members. Yeah.
So I think if we take a look at that and how Spire has delivered on some of those things, the case study that we put together is a great example, and we will share that with everyone because it shows how Spire came together with their members to make a difference. So many of us are out there doing fantastic things in our community where we write a big check and we donate it and it makes a great impact on an organization, right? But then what? We're not getting information back from that, really. We might hear from the one nonprofit how it made a commitment or a difference, an impact. But we don't have a lot more information, much more than that. We've posted it on social media, we get a few likes, but what can we measure from that? And I think there's a great opportunity to look at that. And what Spire did as an example is, and they said, we are gonna come together and we're gonna look at what our members care about. And we're gonna take a look at that and we're gonna be part of that. We're gonna take that same amount that we donate to our community every year and we're gonna match our members in their giving. We're going to match directly to their causes. They impacted, and I'm just giving the brief overview here, they impacted hundreds of organizations with almost 3 times the amount that they would have given otherwise. And they essentially made the nonprofits the ambassadors for the credit union, right? There's another credit union who said, we're going to also match our members. They're in 3 different locations, 3 different states. And they said, we're going to match our members. And we're going to work with a few nonprofits that we have a good relationship with, that we know our members like, right? And we're going to say to those 3 nonprofits, hey, we've got this pool to match from. You go tell your community, you go tell them that we've got your back. And they were able to 1 for 1 match every single one of those donations. And it was a month-long campaign. Do you know how long it took to meet the match? It was 2 days. 2 days, because their community, their members, their nonprofits got so excited about this opportunity that they were so proactive. That money was gone within 2 days. And of course, the credit union stepped up and matched it even more, but they were leaning into that hug. They were making those goosebump moments now with tangible, measurable results, but also making a difference to those individuals. What we saw the nonprofits doing then under their own auspices, we're reaching out to those members and saying, thank you for being a member of that credit union. Thank you for making sure your donation was matched by that credit union, right? So we don't necessarily have to do the hard work ourselves either. When we really have a brand that has values that we are sharing with our community, when we're building that trust, we can deputize our members, our nonprofits, our community. We can make this cycle, this circle work for us and feed our credit union so that we can also then continue to give back even stronger, support our members with better products and services, better loan rates, more donations into our community. It can all feed each other. So how should we think about this, and how can we frame it for ourselves? And Dan Stoltz, I'm going to lean on him in this next one.
So in life, there's really two things. There's have to and get to's. You know, you have to do this. You have to take out the garbage. You have to do this. You have to do this. Then there's things in life that you get to. And what I say about credit unions and giving back to the community is truly a get to. I look at that, and that's a philosophical thought process that we get to give back. We get to use a NetGiver app, and we get to do this to make a difference. We're not mandated, we're not regulated that we have to, but we get to. And I feel like that is very powerful, and it speaks to our membership, and it speaks to our community. We want to be recognized as a community leader, and the NetGiver app helps us get there by making it really a get to, not a have to.
That's powerful.
We get to be part of our members' lives, right? I sometimes feel like I'm up on my soapbox here when I get so passionate, because this is why I'm all in with credit unions. This is why, because we get to be part of our community. We get to make a difference. We don't have to. We have to. Then we're a bank, right? We get to. And I really love this thought about it. And I think that's where then where I've really come to value Anne's voice is, once we've got some of this information, then we can start to pull it apart. Then we can start to use it. But Anne really has always leaned into that. Let's go create the hug. The hug is that combination of the feel good and the deliverables, right? And how we combine those together to create better results. And so let's look at how we engage members and how we actually what this does for us if we have a fully engaged member. And when we're talking fully engaged, we're talking about that member you pictured who also has their credit card with you, their debit card, their savings, checking, maybe a mortgage, maybe their kid's savings account. That's the fully engaged member. So we've got a poll here. I'm gonna just ask Britta to pull that up. Thank you. What are your engaged members? How much more money do engaged members spend? And by this, I mean, how many products, how, if you have a fully engaged member, how much more business are they doing with your credit union? Gonna give it a couple seconds here. All right, people are being a little shy, but we'll take it. Let's go ahead and look at that. And the results are okay. All right, we're thinking about 10.5% more engaged. Well, engaged credit union members spend 22% more. They have 22% more engagement with your credit union, right? When we are talking about on NetGiver, our most engaged donors, they have 4.7 products with a credit union, right? When we're talking about how do we emulate that time and time again, those are the people we actually want to not just retain, but find more of, right? So how do we show, don't tell, and get them to be engaged? So let's look at this when we talk about that Spire example where they partnered with their community. If they had just written a $60,000 check, $25,000, $10,000 check. I don't care if they have just written it, given it to an organization and posted it on social media, that's great. But how did you engage a real feeling with the membership, right? How can you take it that extra step further? And it doesn't have to be just charitable giving campaigns. It can be like this person said of going into their community and donating to their school, or volunteering at the school, building in school branches, right? These are ways to show that you care and that you're engaged. This can be the buy the boots moment where you go out and on a limb and you buy the boots for a member who really needs them to start his new job. Is that showing, don't telling, not telling. So are your engagement efforts lining up with your members and your target audience? So, and what are your thoughts on how do we assess that alignment of giving efforts to our audience is in our credit union members?
Right. I think there's so much in there, but let's try to make sure we kind of give something that's really nuggetable. Take your current state and look at what are you currently doing, right? What are your members doing? And let's make sure we get in there and understand what those needs are, right? We can see what the membership's doing. We can see products and services. We can look at transactions. We talked about this kind of in session 1. We see a lot about our members. We can also see where their needs are. Credit unions have an amazing superpower, and I like to call it the microloan. Sometimes it's commonly called the skip-a-pay. How do we start taking actions that help, most importantly, have measurable impact, right? So we talked kind of about that member audience. Hey, let's also use this as we talked about, how do we understand the pain in the community and how do we connect those up? That beautiful Spire case study that you alluded to, which by the way is in that gorgeous electronic notebook. Let's not worry. Let's not make sure make sure we've got that in there, because that thing is fabulous to reference on. But when you look at that, okay, how do we then connect up? And then, as I like to say, 10x. How do we make sure that we give more to our members, more to our communities, and tie them up? So from a data perspective, we're looking at what do we currently have, what's in our current landscape, what can we currently measure? We're looking at how do we identify where we can get more information, and how do we put that together to build a baseline metric so that with the information that we have, we can figure out how to create a pathway to do more that is also aligned to our strategic goals.
Absolutely. And then being able to measure that and share it is the key, right? So looking at that, we've discussed how do you measure success? How are we currently measuring it? And some of it is looking at first, what matters to you based on your brand promise? What is that you want to then say? And looking at that and then quantifying the results from that. So your measurement of success might be the return on your investment, right? It might be the loans in the door. It might be straight up numbers. But what I would challenge you with is this, that your measurement of success might differ from your CFO's measurement of success, or your CMO's measurement of success, or your tellers, your frontline people's measurement of success. So remember that it's not just about you, but them. And then let's take that even one step further. What would your members say? What matters to your members? And how do we quantify that and to really understand that once we've got this information, we've got to 10x it. We've got to figure out that next step and take our hub that 10x further. And so sometimes it is a really good story. Sometimes it's building on it, but you can't just do it once, right? That is something we'll talk about in the next session. You've got to keep doing it. You've got to grow. And
yeah, you know what? You bring up a really good point here. We are talking about those action items, right? Like getting the story out in the marketplace and having those, as I like to call it, proof points, hug proof points. There's a thing to think about too here. If you're currently looking at how you measure success by, as we said, your current income statement. Hey, why don't we look at the income statement? Why don't we look at the member's life and success that they have, right? The way they have the ability to save money, the way that they're achieving their financial dreams. And let's also look at the way we give to the community. And maybe we make a new derived financial indicator, right? An impact indicator. We can take those three together and maybe it becomes, we score here financially, we score here in the members' experience, and we score here in what we do with the community. And that becomes its own score, right? We have that ability to look at what we do and create new ways.
I absolutely agree. That's exactly the key. And there are lots of ways we can do that. And actually, Annie teed it up perfectly for the poll that we've got. I think this is our last poll today. Let's see, what are some of the outputs that you can measure? This is again, multiple choice. This is, you can type it in the chat if you prefer, if there's something you're not seeing. Let's just think about some of the things you, as an individual today in your seat, can start to activate on, right? We can start small, we can start from where you are at and grow. We don't swallow the ocean today. We can do this in time.
You know what we can't do? You know what we can't do? We can't swallow the ocean. You know what we can do? We can make a good cup of tea.
Absolutely, we can make a great cup of tea. All right, let's share the results on this because I think this is awesome. Yes, we can do an in-branch thermometer on our website. We can put it in our newsletter. Oh, I love CU Social Good article. There's that. There's Advancing Communities by CUNA. There's great opportunities to share these stories. Sponsor community events, impact reports. We're going to talk a little bit about that next time because that is extremely valuable and pulls in a lot of what Anne was just sharing. Empower our team. That is huge. We talked a lot about in that first session of how do we get that internal buy-in as well. Media coverage, blog on our website, yes, but we have to start somewhere. So I think that's great feedback. All right. So we are running close to the end of our time, and I'm really excited because this next section is going to really inform what we do in our third session together. You've already given us some really good feedback, some really great takeaways from that first session. Please use that digital workbook, because what are the 5 actions that you in your seat can do to act on your brand promise? You don't have to be a CMO and you don't have to be a teller. You can be in your seat making an impact. So let's think about that. Let's think about how we are going to advance what we're doing and submit those 5 actions that you can do to act on your brand promise. Next session, we're going to look at how we approach our members, how we actually deliver everything we've been talking about. So make sure you join us a week from today, same time, August 31st, 1 p.m. Central Time. And remember that workbook is there so that when you walk away from these 3 sessions, when you walk away from hearing Eric and Anne and myself talk about all these many things, you've got a plan you can start to act upon. We will still be a resource. You can reach out to Thrive and NetGiver, and we are very happy to work with you on delivering. But we want to set you up to start making those differences today, to start to 10x your hub by first identifying it, uncovering it, activating it, and next delivering on it. So this is where we've gone to so far. We can't wait to have you join us. I do want to make sure, Anne, Eric, anything else you want to make sure to share today?
That was great, Miriam. That was absolutely fantastic.
We'll see you all next week. Thank you.
Have a great one, everybody.